Let's start with a quick, slightly uncomfortable inventory. Do you replay small mistakes in your head at 1 a.m. like they're crime scenes? When something actually goes well, is your first instinct to say, "I got lucky," instead of, "I earned that"? When someone criticizes you, do you accept it as objective fact and carry it around for a week? Do you compare yourself to other people constantly and quietly conclude you're the background character in someone else's story? If you nodded along to most of that, I've got some bad news and some good news. The bad news? You're walking around with a price tag on yourself, and it's set way too low. The good news? You're the only one who gets to change it, and it's genuinely fixable. Here's a way to think about it that sounds a little cold, but is actually pretty accurate. Imagine yourself as a product on a shelf. Your self-esteem is the price sticker you put on that product. And if deep down you believe you're not worth much, you don't need anyone else to devalue you. You'll do it yourself. Slap a "Clearance, please just take me" sticker right on your own forehead, and then act confused when people treat you accordingly. One philosopher put it in a genuinely useful way. Your self-esteem is basically the gap between what you've actually achieved and what you expected of yourself. Picture an invisible scale. On one side, your real accomplishments. On the other, your expectations. If the scale tips too far toward expectations, you feel like you're constantly failing, even when you're objectively doing fine. His conclusion was simple: either lower your expectations or actually improve. Reasonable advice, except real life is messier than a scale. Sometimes you hit a genuine achievement and it doesn't move the needle for you at all, because something called imposter syndrome has convinced you it doesn't count, that you got lucky, that any second now everyone's going to realize you don't actually know what you're doing. Fixing this takes real, sometimes slow work. The target isn't some inflated ego where you think you're better than everyone. That's just a different flavor of broken. The target is what's sometimes called stable self-esteem. You look at yourself honestly, flaws included, and your confidence doesn't collapse the moment someone criticizes you, and doesn't inflate the moment someone praises you either. It's just solid, internally anchored, instead of bouncing around based on whatever anyone else says about you today. A few things worth actually internalizing here, because they matter more than they sound. You're allowed to make mistakes. That's not evidence you're a failure. That's literally how competence gets built. A setback doesn't define your worth. It's information, not a verdict. Your value as a person isn't something you have to re-earn every single day through performance. And comparing yourself to other people is basically useless. The only fair comparison is against who you were a year ago, not against some stranger's curated version of success. Once that foundation is actually solid, not perfect, just solid enough, you're ready for the real conversation. What I'd call polite boldness. Here's the myth to kill immediately. Boldness doesn't mean becoming loud, obnoxious, or convinced you're better than everyone around you. That's not confidence. That's just insecurity wearing a louder outfit, and the world tends to notice and correct that pretty quickly. A genuinely bold person respects themselves completely, and still respects everyone around them completely. They'd never think, "I'm amazing, everyone else is beneath me," because they know two things. First, they're not always right either. And second, people who go around devaluing everyone in their orbit are usually compensating for something, and the world eventually sends them the bill for it. Real boldness looks like this instead. You understand your actual worth, so you stop settling for less than what you're worth. And you're willing to take on more when you genuinely believe you can handle it, not out of blind overconfidence. I'll just wing it. But out of an honest, tested belief, I can actually do this, so I'm not staying quiet about it. Let me give you an actual example of what this looks like, because theory alone doesn't stick. Picture someone, we'll call her Maya, early in her career, genuinely talented at what she did, but constantly undercutting herself. Every project she finished, she'd immediately explain away as, "Not that impressive, honestly, anyone could have done it." When her manager gave her critical feedback, she'd absorb it as a complete verdict on her competence and spiral for days. When a promotion opportunity opened up, She assumed someone more qualified would obviously get it, so she didn't even apply. Someone else did get that promotion, someone genuinely less experienced than Maya, but who had simply put their hand up and said, "I want this, and here's why I think I can do it." Maya watched that happen and had the exact realization a lot of people eventually have. It wasn't that the other person was more talented, it's that they asked, and she didn't. That's the entire gap most of the time. Not skill, not luck, just the willingness to say, "I want this," out loud, instead of quietly hoping someone notices. Now, how do you actually build that muscle practically, starting today? Because just be confident is useless advice without something concrete underneath it. First, start keeping your word to yourself. This sounds almost too small to matter, but it's foundational. If you told yourself you'd go for a walk, go for the walk. If you said you'd finish that task by Thursday, finish it by Thursday. Every broken promise to yourself, even the tiny ones, quietly teaches your own brain that your word isn't reliable, and that erosion shows up everywhere else eventually. You can't build real confidence on top of a habit of letting yourself down. Second, actually document your wins. This feels tedious and a little cringeworthy, which is exactly why almost nobody does it, which is exactly why it works. Write down real accomplishments, the ones that actually matter to you, not just the ones that'd impress a stranger. When imposter syndrome shows up at 1 a.m., whispering that you don't actually deserve anything you have, you want an actual list to point to, not just a vague feeling you're supposed to trust. Third, practice doing the uncomfortable thing. Tell the waiter the dish wasn't good instead of eating it anyway and complaining to your friends later. Tell a coworker directly that a report needs real revisions instead of quietly redoing their work yourself. Stop being the person who agrees to everything just to keep the peace. Yes, some people won't love hearing your honest opinion. That's an acceptable cost. If you ever end up managing people or running something of your own, you cannot be universally comfortable for everyone around you. Trying to be will bankrupt you, literally or emotionally, one way or another. Fourth, run the "so what" test. Ask yourself honestly, what's the actual worst realistic outcome here? And then picture yourself surviving it, because you will. You mess up a number in a report, so what? You fix it. A client doesn't like your pitch, so what? You propose something else. You get nervous and stumble through a presentation, so what? You finish it anyway and move on. Most of the catastrophic outcomes your brain rehearses never actually happen, and the ones that do are almost always survivable, in a way your anxiety refuses to admit in the moment. Fifth, notice where you're already good at something and transfer that evidence. You might not think of yourself as a confident person in general, but you're probably genuinely skilled at something specific. Coordinating a chaotic group project, staying calm during an actual crisis, being weirdly good at a hobby that requires real focus and patience. That competence is real proof you're capable of learning and executing difficult things. It's not a separate, unrelated skill. It's evidence you can point to the next time your brain tries to convince you you're not capable of anything. And here's the part that actually matters most. More than any single exercise on that list, you don't wait until you feel ready and confident to start acting bolder. That order is backwards, and it's exactly the trap that keeps people stuck for years. You act first, a little uncomfortably, a little clumsily, and the confidence follows the action, not the other way around. Nobody wakes up one day simply feeling ready. You build the feeling by doing the thing while it's still uncomfortable, over and over, until it quietly stops being uncomfortable. So here's the actual bottom line. This isn't about becoming someone loud, aggressive, or difficult to be around. It's about refusing to sell yourself at a discount just because staying quiet feels safer. Fix the price tag first. Deal honestly with your own self-worth. Then start practicing the muscle. Keep your word. Track your wins. Say the uncomfortable thing. Survive the worst-case scenario in your head before it ever shows up in real life. And use evidence of your own competence instead of vague self-doubt to make your decisions. Nobody's coming to notice your quiet talent and hand you what you deserve out of fairness. That's not how it actually works, no matter how nice a story it is to believe. You have to actually claim it, calmly and directly, without apologizing for taking up the space you've genuinely earned. Stop marking yourself down. You were never on clearance to begin with.